Hello and welcome to this new episode of The New Journey, a show that empowers and inspires new Canadians through conversations, stories, and insights. I'm very pleased to be joining today with our guest here, Andry. Andry is the co-founder of a number of companies, including Musefind and most recently, IPEX Capital. In terms of his work, he is a startup advisor, he's a mentor, he's a serial entrepreneur, and we would like to learn more about his journey. Thanks for joining us, Andry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Gurinder.
Walk us through your journey. What were your initial, startup days?
So I graduated from UBC about 2009, so it was a while ago. And I did graduate with a commerce degree, specializing in accounting. After graduation, I decided to do my CA designation, which is now turned into CPA, and then pursue a career in corporates. Now, after a few years working for a corporate, I was working at TELUS. I feel that I want to have much more impact. And so in 2014, I decided to, explore more entrepreneurship opportunities, get myself talking to various startup founders, reading a lot of books. And most importantly, I decided to join Startup Weekend Vancouver in 2014. And that's where I actually met my co-founders for my first startup, Musefind. And it was, the weekend project and the weekend sort of like a hackathon turned into a full startup. A couple of months later, we did have an amazing journey together. We went to New York for our incubator program and then set up offices, grow, scale, and getting through pivot, in our ideas. And there's ups and downs absolutely throughout that journey. And ever since then, I never looked back into, joining corporate's, job environment again. And I just basically stick around in the startup environment. And then I recently co-founded this startup along with my co-founders as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So you mentioned you wanted to make a bigger impact, and that's why you left the corporate job. Did the bigger impact come with a lot of challenges? Were there initial challenges that you had to face as you were succeeding, or was it a smooth ride? Some founders they sometimes get a smooth ride, not very occasionally, but I've heard some good stories where the startups got accepted into an accelerator and they got some funding right away. So what was the case with your startup?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of ups and downs and, high moments and low moments, right? Because when you first started, you haven't started a company before. So obviously, as you're going into fundraising, then the challenges is, you haven't exited a company before. Why should I trust you from an investor perspective, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to show that you have a plan, right? And not everybody will say yes to the plan. So the challenges here is pretty much, are you growing enough, thick skin in a way to receive feedback, right? And evolve from it. And also understanding that no now doesn't mean no forever.
Yeah.
Right. And then just be resourceful, truly using the assets that you have, which is, your capital, that's not a lot, right? The employee that you have, and then sort of like, how do we maximize our return from the asset that we have, right? So being resourceful because, you don't have the backing of big corporates or the big capital that is endless to execute what you want, right? So it's actually the challenges shapes up my personality and shapes up how I approach things. And I think the challenges just make us, stronger.
Okay, perfect. That's definitely true. The challenges definitely make you stronger. In terms of fundraising, you mentioned about that, a couple of times. How was your fundraising journey? Was it easy to get introduced to the investors, or were you reaching out? What were the different methods you were utilizing to reach out to those investors?
Yes, so we have a couple of approaches, and I think fundraising in general is truly art and science, more on the art side, right? Because think about it this way: you have built relationship throughout the people in your professional journeys, and when it comes to fundraising, now it's a time to, I guess, you can start to, really understand who are those people in your network, and
Yeah.
are they going to be the perfect, ideal investor for you, right? And we tried every single method. We tried a cold method, which does not work really well, right?
Yeah.
But what works really well is if we have a warm connections with people and we're getting introduced and then building the relationship, sort of like organically, right? Like the earlier that you can establish that relationship, the better, because it will take time for people to trust you. And
Yeah.
maybe when you start the first project, like I did with the second project, I started to rekindle those relationships again, even before we start fundraising, right?
Okay.
So just letting people know that, hey, I'm working
Yeah.
on this project. It's about, I'm going to keep you up to date. We might do fundraising. I'll inform you then, right? So then people can see how you grow from an idea to an actual traction and an actual business, like a deck and everything else, right? So that when the moment comes to raise the fund, they have heard about your company before. They have seen how you've grown from an idea only into the format that you are. But I guess the more that you talk to the investors, the more you also realize what sort of type of investors that would jive really well with you, right? Like, do you want investors that are going to be more hands-on? Do you want investors that are going to be more, I guess, passive in terms of their investment, and they trust your decision and judgment, and they'll entrust your capital and just keep them up to date, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it's going to be art. And know that it is a long-term relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are building a long-term relationship. They might have access to, larger investors and so on, but you cannot basically try to get everything out of them like from day one,
Yeah.
right? Because that's not how relationship is built, and you're not really adding value to them as well, right?
Yeah.
So you have to build the relationship, add value to them as well, introduce them to other founders that you think are a great fit for them, and communicate.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. In terms of these investors that you were working with, when you were fundraising, what was your approach in terms of was it pitch deck based, or were you pitching a lot, or what were the things that the investors were looking for when you were fundraising?
Yes, so there are a couple of types, as I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
Different types of investor looking for different types of validation, right? But the one thing that we understand and we learn from this process is that we as founders always present the best reason for people to invest in a company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to understand how an investor think, right?
Yeah.
Investors are always seeing hockey stick growth. They're always seeing good traction, big market, great team. So they're looking for a reason not to invest in your company, because otherwise they'll, the best investors know how to differentiate between, just like a standard hockey stick thing, or whether something has a substance, right? So I think how we're dealing with that is we really tailored our approach to the investors, right? So if investors are more numbers heavy and really want to dig deeper into the detail, then we will provide materials that are sufficient and that are meeting their needs. If an investor is more on, tell me about the market, tell me about how exciting the field is, then we'll tailor the messaging of the deck and everything else towards that type of investors.
Okay.
Right? So we're still keeping the same story, and we're just highlighting different aspects of the story depending on the type of investors. And again, this is more of an art versus science. So the more that you do this, the more that you can also realize from the first conversation with the investors what type of investors they are, right?
Okay.
One other type of investors, they like to see that other people have already invested in.
Yeah.
Right. If people are in, then they will be like, okay, I'm gonna follow who have been who have invested in your company.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then with those type of investors, obviously those are not the first one that we will reach out to, because they need somebody that's already there, and then they will follow on. Right?
Yeah.
So I think the key is to be able to segregate, just like you're segregating your target market, right?
Hmm.
You're stratifying your target consumer, then you are also
Yeah.
doing the same with your investors as well.
Perfect. Perfect. And so, taking a pause here and going back to your initial journey here. So, how was it in terms of as a newcomer yourself? How tough was it to make this switch from a corporate to a startup founder, knowing that there are going to be challenges, and this is a common question that we get from all our audiences. Is as a newcomer, when do you start thinking about startups? What are the things that they need to keep in mind to make sure that they are taking the right steps at the right time? Because I think timing is very important, specifically for newcomers, because they have immigrated to Canada with a dream, and they want to achieve this dream as well.
Yeah, same thing. I came here to study, and just like everybody else, I have to understand the environment. I have to build my network, right? And then I have to understand the lay of the land and actually what I wanted to do long term, right? So I think
Yeah.
what I learned so far from my journey is that we need to, think about ourselves. Okay, yes, we're a newcomer here, but we never have to think that we are sort of like inferior versus
Yeah.
the people that have already been here. As a matter of fact, because we come from different countries, different background, we grew up somewhere else, that actually is very unique to us. And in a lot of ways, the connections that I built with people around the globe is, I cannot have that if I were just
Yeah.
basically artist in Canada and then grew up and everything else in Canada, right? So
Yeah.
use your background, use the network that you have built internationally as an advantage, right? And you might also think about what works in other countries and
Hmm.
what is that thing or that technology or process, has it been implemented in Canada, for example, right? And if not, why?
Yeah.
You gotta figure out, right? If you're looking for opportunities, then there might be an answer for that is okay, then people just simply not know, or there isn't just people that know that it's being done effectively in other countries. So
Yeah.
that represent an opportunity, right? So I think if you're coming from another country, after settling down and after understanding how, like how things are, what are booming in Canada, and what are the, I guess, the community aspect of what you want to do, then it's time to ask that question, right? Like,
Yeah.
why am I unique, right? Why am I uniquely positioned to do this business, right? So don't start any business just for the sake of starting a
Yeah.
business, but ask yourself the hard question of why me, right?
Yeah.
Why not other people?
Yeah.
What's unique? Why customers would pick me over other people,
Hmm.
right? So those questions sometimes need to be answered rather than just looking at opportunities, right? Opportunities will always be there, exist almost every single day, every single generation. But what's important is, you know, connecting the opportunity with every single one of us, with our unique background, right? And I think as newcomers, that is our biggest advantage, is that we have seen more of the world and we have seen
Yeah.
multiple facets of the world, right?
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that unique
Yeah.
perspective. And it becomes very critical when we think of that perspective as an advantage point, rather than thinking of as a point that is going against us or going against the newcomers as well. So thanks for sharing that. So you are a
Yeah.
mentor as
Anytime.
well, and you advise startups. So what are the things that you are sharing with the startups and the founders these days? And what's the most important thing for founders to look into when they are working with you?
Yeah, so I provide advice on multiple fronts, mainly in the financials and fundraising area.
Mm-hmm.
Through my work with Vantech, at NRC IRAP, as well as my work with a couple of other startups. But I think what my biggest learning from doing this mentorship is that, knowing that, being a founder is hard. Creating a business is hard, and you need
Mm-hmm.
to have social support. You need to have the support from your family, from your significant other, in order to make the journey easier, right? The journey that founders choose to go into is already hard in the first place, and without the support of the people behind, it will be even harder. So my advice to all the startups that I advise is that you need to make sure that you're keeping your mental health, at a top position. Do not let yourself, do not just completely work and then lose touch with everything else that's happening, your family, your friends, right? You have to maintain some balance, because that's how you, this is a marathon, right? That's how you can finish the marathon, right? A lot of people think that, being a startup is going to be a sprint, just keep sprinting every day and then you'll suddenly hit a jackpot.
Yeah.
Right. But, having done this for the last 6 years, the more I do this, the more I think this is a marathon, right? A marathon in terms of, family have to understand that this is a marathon. A marathon in terms of your health. You need to maintain your health and make sure that you can, run the marathon, right? There's no point of, practicing until you're burned out, but then you cannot run the marathon, right? So, that's my biggest advice to people, is to make sure that they take care of themselves, take care of their family and significant others, so that they can take care of you, right, during the hard times. Because trust me, the down moment, the low moment is when you need support, right? Either you get it from another founders. It's great if you have co-founders, right? Like when I was building these two business, I have co-founders. So, but if you're a solo founder, that is when things are really hard. That is when you need to really have close advisory board, or you need to have support, a mentor, right? In order to, you be able to really speak out what you have in mind, right? Because your family might not understand, your significant other might not understand, but the people who have went through the journey can relate with you. So I think my biggest value that I'm adding to these people is not my advice on how to do financial models, on how to do, forecasting. Those things are, you can get it from YouTube, you can search, lots of resources available, but it's more on supporting them, mentally and morally as well, like cheering them up when they're down, and, looking for ways when they're, when they're desperate. I'm always trying to put positive thoughts into it.
Awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think the key here is to, think of your startup journey as a marathon, not as a sprint, because in sprint, if you're running the sprint every day, you will burn out, and you will need a strong support system. So thanks for sharing that. So as a startup founder, if there is a newcomer who is a startup founder, what kind of resources they can access to, find mentors? Because one of the biggest challenges to find a mentor who has the time, who has the same vision as a founder to basically, support you. So what are some of those resources where you could find mentors and get connected with them and access their services as well?
Yes. Well, obviously the company that you're building right now, Gurvinder, right? Like you're really trying to help people to, I guess, to be able to familiarize and be able to start businesses and so on. The other resources that I can think about is there are so many events around town. I mean, these days, every event will be online, right? So there's a lot of startup events. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of, groups that you can join in order to meet like-minded people these days, right? With the advent of Discord, there's so many different communities that you can be a part of. And I think my other messages is don't be afraid. I mean, if you met two people and you build very good rapport and trust, they can introduce you to more people, right? That's how your network actually grows. It's not just the first people that you know, but also the people, when you start adding value to other people, they will be much more likely to open the network, right? And I think there's a lot of, community like Spring, like there's so many Foresight, there's a lot of incubators, and there's a lot of accelerator in town that is going to be able to, connect you with more people, right? And I think that's my message. And make sure that your LinkedIn is sort of like up to date in terms of what
Yeah.
you're doing these days and what you've done in the past. So that when people look you up, then they know what your background is and what's your expertise.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. For anybody who is thinking of starting up a new company, what sort of advice would you give them? If you had to pick, three pieces for them on the things that you should be looking at, what would those three things be?
Yeah. So I guess number one is, ask the why, right? Why you want to do this, right? And number two is, what's the problem and how big is the problem, right? And I guess number three is just, are you going to be ready to, do this marathon? Because I can tell you, if you're just looking at the startup for a year, you won't likely like it after, right? So are you ready to commit and sort of like take out stability or stability in terms of income, stability in terms of hours of working, and be able to really work on this for the next 4 to 5 years, right? So really, really challenge yourself hard before you embark on this journey, because starting is easy, right?
Yeah.
The hard part is when you are in the middle, right? When you are in the middle. And one book that I love, and one book that I keep reading when I'm in the hard moment, is called Messy Middles. It's by Scott Belsky, who sold his company to Adobe. That really talks about, hey, starting something is great. You're in a honeymoon period. You are so excited. You are like promoting it to everybody, right? Until you hit the first challenge, until you hit the second challenge, right? That's when you are tested. You're not tested when you are at your success. You are tested when you are low when things are hard, right? So, you got to be able to, sort of like portrays that situation, right? Can you handle it? Are you ready to handle it? Right? What is your plan to, if that were to happen, right? So I guess those things are, to be thought of before you start to embark on the startup journey.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Lastly, I know you have recently ventured and you have started another company, which is a capital-based or investing company. Tell us a little about that new venture that you are working on right now.
Yeah, so our new company is called IPEX, so it stands for Intangible Properties Exchange. And what we do is we help companies or individuals unlock the value in their intangible assets, right? So intangible assets is something like patents, trademarks, franchise rights, a lot of the rights in terms of licensing rights. So a lot of these intangibles are just usually sitting down there, not being monetized, not being reflected on the financial statements. But to be telling you the truth, like a lot of the value in the company is based on their intangible assets, right? So brands, the biggest value in a brand, why you want to pay more for something that is you can get it from another brand cheaper with the same cost, even for produce, is because of the brand, right? It's something that you cannot touch, you cannot, tangible, but it's impacting the value. So we are helping companies to be able to unlock these values and to be able to, support their future growth through helping them fundraise for their IP.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Andry.
So that's what we do.
Any last piece of advice for newcomers who are, trying to settle into Canada, trying to, learn new skills, trying to find new jobs or to open their business? Any advice for them?
My advice would be do learn what you are passionate about, right? And do it consistently, right? You can burn yourself out if you are, doing things like 20 hours per day. So try to, basically do a similar consistent doses every single day, just like exercising, right? You got to exercise consistently in order to get the benefit out of exercising, right? And ask those questions that I sort of mentioned before in order to make sure that you are, fully committed into the journey, right? And, even if you decided that, not yet right now, and if you still have the passion, you can start, you can start the business as a side business, right? Okay. And then sort of like continuously building and learning while you still have the stability. And then when it becomes, when it grows and grows and grows, then that's the moment when you know that, hey, there is something in here and I'd like to invest more, right? Yeah. So that's, pretty much how I started the two companies right now with my co-founders is that, hey, look, there's something in here. Let's explore it. Let's talk to more people and make sure that there is an opportunity. And if there is enough signal, then you want to go, okay, let's start. Are you ready to go jump into the opportunity, right? So
awesome.
That's what I would recommend.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your insights here, Andry. I think it was a pleasure talking to you. We had a great discussion. And for the audience, if you're looking for more insights, more knowledge, and more stories from newcomer founders and learning from their journeys, please log on to www.settlefast.ca. We will be back with another story, with another journey next week. Till then, thank you. Thank you, Andry.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.